This is
Make it plain.
Make it plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make it plain.
Get woke.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving, plus high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
Ladies and gentlemen, joining us now to talk about the brand new jobs report, the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council. Wait a minute, I got there. I want to get this right. I'm sorry. Let me do this. I missed something. Deputy Assistant to the President and the Deputy Director. So I got to do both. Okay, let me start over. Okay, I want to get it right. Ladies and gentlemen, brand new jobs report out. Who better to talk to than the Deputy Assistant to the President and the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council? We welcome back to Make It Plain, Joelle Gamble. Madam Deputy Assistant and Madam Deputy Director, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here with us. So 209,000 jobs added, I believe?
Yes, that's correct. Last month in June, we learned today that the U.S. economy added 209,000 jobs. That brings the total since the president took office to 13.2 million jobs created, 4 million more jobs than there were before the pandemic.
Why are some of the analysts saying that this June number wasn't as high as expected?
Well, a lot of economic forecasters try to take all the data we have and try to, predict what the jobs report might look like. And sometimes the jobs report comes in higher or lower than what they predicted. But I wouldn't look too much into the fact that this report was a little bit lower than what was expected. 209,000 jobs added in the course of a month is a really strong jobs number.
I would think so. And that's consistent growth since the pandemic, is it not?
Yes, it is. And it brings the 3-month average to 244,000 jobs.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, were also some concerns about the Fed, the interest rate, inflation. I failed economics in college, by the way. Full disclosure, I'm always upfront about that. So help us understand what the concern was the Fed had. Is that still a concern? And it's my understanding that this wasn't a bad number, but it's a little bit down, that's maybe a good thing for the Fed in terms of interest rates?
So as the White House, we respect the Federal Reserve's independence, so we won't, comment on their particular policy choices and decisions. But what I can say is that, the Fed is doing what it is. It's trying to fulfill its goal of bringing down inflation while also trying to maintain a strong labor market recovery. And I would say that the president also wants to have a strong labor market recovery and get inflation down. And so, for us, at least, we want to see inflation come down while the labor market remains strong. And this is a report that helps to achieve that.
Because inflation is definitely coming down, correct?
It's fallen by about half since around this time last year, which is a good start.
A good thing. Okay. We're hearing the new term Bidenomics. Help us to understand how Bidenomics is in effect right now as we look at these job numbers for June.
Yes. I mean, Bidenomics is the president's plan to grow the economy from the middle out and bottom up, which means, making smart investments in infrastructure, manufacturing, and clean energy, promoting competition. It also means empowering workers, making sure we can increase their wages, help Americans join the workforce, and make sure they can get into good paying jobs. And this jobs report is the latest evidence that plan is working because the U.S. has seen the strongest recovery from the pandemic recession and the lowest inflation of any leading global economy. We still have work to do to bring down costs for families, but we are making a lot of progress and wages are rising. So as of May of this year, wages are higher than they were a year ago, even accounting for inflation. And as I mentioned, annual inflation has fallen for 11 months in a row and is less than half of what it was last year. And so when we look at this report, we see another sign that the president's plan to grow the economy by really investing in working people is playing out.
Trying to confirm too, a lot of these jobs and the new jobs being created, the jobs that people are getting, we're looking at some increased wages too, aren't we?
Yes, wages are up, I believe, more than 4% compared to last year, and they're up even higher for some of the lowest paid workers.
So things are going well in terms of the economy and jobs. There's really nothing to be upset
when you look
about.
At the labor market, there's a lot of good happening.
Yeah, especially coming back out of the pandemic period we were in. What else would you attribute, besides the president's policies, what else would you attribute to the success in the labor market? Are people feeling more confident going out here looking for jobs? What are you thinking?
Well, I think, the president's policies played a huge role in it. And the other piece of that puzzle is the American workers themselves. And we have an incredibly resilient workforce that, worked through and dealt with the pandemic and pandemic uncertainty, but is now back in full force. We're now seeing a labor force participation rate that is, at least for working age Americans, the highest it's been in 20 years. And so we're just looking at a really resilient American workforce. And, combined with the president's policies, we're seeing a really spectacular labor market recovery. I will say for this June report, the unemployment rate was up for Black Americans. But the thing is, it's really volatile data. I used to be the chief economist at the Labor Department and worked on this. And so it's really most useful to look at the numbers on a quarterly basis in case there's something that's just going on with the survey. And if you look at it on a quarterly basis, then the jobless rate, the unemployment rate for Black Americans is still tied with the previous quarter for the lowest on record. Of course, we're going to continue to pay attention to this figure because we don't want to see it coming up. And the president is really, really committed to reducing inequality and investing in communities that have been left behind. But from an economist standpoint, this June figure is not yet giving me pause.
Okay, well that's good to know, and we know it's volatile. That we could do. You don't have time to do a whole seminar on adjustments.
It just jumps around. Yeah.
Monthly adjustments. Lord have mercy. I figured that out. That's a lot. Well, this is good news. More jobs created. I think the numbers are showing in under any president in modern history, which is a good thing. So we hope that will continue. Are there any pitfalls that you would say we need to be concerned about that might take us back?
I mean, I honestly think the biggest threat to being able to keep making progress is the fact that House Republicans keep pushing policies that would reverse course. The tax cuts for the rich and the big corporations. They want to shrink public investments. They want to undermine investments in infrastructure and education, shipping good jobs overseas. Like that is the thing that I think we should all be paying attention to because it would reverse the progress that's been made.
Right. And they're against infrastructure until it's in their district and they show up at the at the groundbreaking, right?
As the president likes to say, he'll see them at the
groundbreaking. All right. We appreciate you as always. Joelle Gamble is Deputy Assistant to the President and the Deputy Director at the National Economic Council. Thank you as always for joining us on Make It Plain.
Thank you for having me.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
And now we're happy to be joined, as always, with the latest on the June jobs report. We always check in with him monthly, the chief economist at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, centeronbudget.org, our own Chad Stone. Chad, how are you, buddy?
I'm well, Mark. How are you?
Just fine. And folks, Chad and I together, it has been, I guess, a little over a month. One other person that we would consult with from time to time was our dear friend, William Spriggs, the longtime chair of the economics department at Howard and the chief economist for the AFL-CIO. Bill unexpectedly made his transition, and it is, I believe, his last media appearance was with Chad and me, as a matter of fact. So we lift him up, and we lift up his family as well. He's a comrade that will be missed.
A good man and a really good economist and very influential economist.
Yes, very influential, to say the very least. Indeed, he was. So jobs numbers. So the good news is that the still pretty much a steady pace. I had asked Joelle Gamble in the White House about this, though. Some economists and some prognosticators, I know you don't do that, but there are those who are saying that these numbers, the 209,000, was not as good as they had expected. But I'm not sure if I know what they're talking about, Chad. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So before the jobs report comes out, lots of people try to make guesstimates. Some informed guesstimates, many informed guesstimates by people who do forecasting, but forecasting is about the future, and the future we don't know. So it's not a judgment in any particular way, but it did come in under where the consensus was. But and frankly, the consensus missed in previous months by underestimating how much it would be. So they're subject to error, and it's not malice or anything like that, but it's, I mean, you may think that it's to predict it to be higher and have it come in low would be some kind of political game, but that's not what most analysts pay. They're trying to get it right, and the data can sometimes fool us.
Well, and I guess the thing that kind of threw me off, though, was that this number was not that far off. I mean, was it? I mean, this was still a good number, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely a fine number, and it, in fact, it's well above the number that people think is required to kind of keep the economy rolling at a steady pace, which is under 100,000. But we do have to say something else, which is that the two previous months were revised down by 100,000 or 110,000. So, but nevertheless, we're well above where we were when the pandemic hit. We're very close to full employment, if not at full employment, and that's a solid jobs number. We shouldn't expect 400,000 or 300,000 jobs a month anymore, because we're so close to full employment.
Where are we with the Fed and how this employment rate impacts their ongoing deliberations?
Well, it's a slowdown, but not a collapse of jobs, which is kind of what they're aiming for in an ideal scenario. So they should probably be happy with this pace of job growth, and the fact that the unemployment rate is still low. It's below 4% and has been for a very long time, and it's fluctuated in a very narrow range, around the rate that we had just prior to the pandemic. So it's bouncing around 3.5, 3.6, 3.7. That's a real good unemployment rate. So, we're not seeing a recession. We're seeing solid job gains. GDP is growing a little more slowly, but people were talking about, oh, there's going to be a recession. There's going to be a recession. Well, sometime there's going to be one, sometime in the next 10 years, but it's the current economic situation looks pretty good for continuing. But I'm loath to predict the future.
Over 200,000 job gains in every month since the pandemic, right? So this is still forward motion. This is a comeback.
Yes, it is. It's forward motion for sure. We are, as I keep saying, we're by reasonable definitions of full employment, we're really close.
We talk about leisure and hospitality. No losses there per se, up 21,000, I'm sorry, in the month of June. So that's we've been talking about that for some time. That was a little bit slower to come back, but it looks like that's coming back now.
Yeah, although the 23,000 is, and we've been at a level something like that for the past couple of months, is still a little low for closing the full gap that we had. I forget what that is. Oh yeah, okay. So we're still leisure and hospitality is still down. Oh, I can't see my cheat sheet, but leisure and hospitality is still down several 100,000 from the pre-pandemic level, but it has been coming back. It used to be down way more than that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely coming back.
It's coming back.
And that of course is where lots of lower paid workers can be found, and lots of women, and we want to see that come back.
You would have thought it would be all if the airport, if my traveling going through the airport was any indication, you would think it would be all the way back because everybody's in the TSA line.
Yeah.
Maybe they just spend the night in the airport and not in the hotels. I don't know, but if that was any indication,
right.
you would think it would be. You would think it would be all the way back. So we're at this place too. Also, government employment is down, state and local, and it's summertime. So, as we know, there are a lot of times that has to do with schools. So that's not, if that's going to be down, it's going to be down at this time of year anyway.
Yeah, leisure and hospitality, and especially local government education have been down a whole lot over the whole. They've been one of the drags on job growth, if you want to call it that. But the huge gaps that they both experienced in 2001 and early 2002, those have been narrowed, but they're still down when almost every other, private employment is up a whole lot, total employment is up a whole lot. Payroll employment, I'm talking, but state and local government is still down some.
Both the labor force participation rate is more than it was in February 2020, as well as the 25 to 54 employed population. All those numbers are above February 2020, right?
For the 25 to 54 population, that's right. For the total population, labor force participation is pretty good, but there's a downward trend due to the retirement of the baby boom generation,
right.
and that means that you're going to see over time that the full employment, that the labor force participation rate and the employment to population ratio for the 16 and over population is going to be fighting that downward trend. So the full employment level will be a little bit lower because there's more retired baby boomers that aren't working. But basically good numbers, and the 25 to 54 numbers are really good because they're both the labor force participation rate and the employment population ratio are better than they've been in a very long time.
Yeah.
Not-
But now what we also have, where when you and I last talked, and I think when we talked with Bill, the conversation was the historic low in Black unemployment. That's ticked back up. And then there's this headline in the Hill. I'm trying to make sense out of, sometimes these headlines are more dramatic than it actually, but this is a very dramatic headline. It says Black workers comprise 90% of recent unemployment spike. And then the lead says Black workers made up about 267,000 of the 300 new unemployment cases this spring. And that takes 6% unemployment for African Americans, back at twice the white unemployment rate. So is that a reflection? Let me put my student hat on. I'm gonna try to say it. Tell me if I'm right. Because when you read that headline, it looks like, is it that many Black workers have lost their jobs, or is it that more Black workers, more African Americans are coming back into the labor force to cite their unemployment? What is it?
I'm a little bit confused by exactly what the headline is saying. What we know is that the Black unemployment rate is back to the same 6% that it was before the pandemic. Now, month-to-month changes in Black unemployment, and this seems to be talking about some recent month-to-month changes. They're very volatile in the data because the sample size is relatively small, and so the famous margin of error is relatively wide. A couple months ago, we had the lowest Black unemployment rate that we've ever experienced in data back to something like 1972, but that's ticked back up again to the 6%, which was much lower than through most of the recovery from the Great Recession. We got down to 6% in just before the pandemic, and then of course it soared in the pandemic recession. But now it's back to 6% again. Now we have to look at all the data, including labor force participation and the employment to population ratio, because as you say, there could be some dropping out. But I haven't looked carefully at that. I would have to look. You've piqued my interest in exploring whether there's this is the kind of superficial good news, at least, that we're back to unemployment rates that we had before, but those still had that 2-to-1 ratio, and we're back to that.
Yeah, sure. Right. Back to the 2-to-1. And I didn't mean to catch y'all. I just saw myself in it, and I was trying to read it. It is a dramatic headline. We know it's back up, but it's that's one thing, and it is, the 2-to-1 has pretty much always been there, unfortunately. But when it says 90%, then that's something that we probably need to spend some time trying to figure that out. What exactly that means.
If it's about 1 month. You have to be very careful about judging that because of the volatility in the data. Right. I've learned that. That's something else, folks. Small miracles do occur. I learn a lot from Chad, so I'm able, when these things come up, I'm saying, it's volatile, and adjustment stuff is happening. I was talking to Joelle Gamble at the White House and brought that up, and she seemed impressed that I knew that. Well,
and I said,
you're going to be a good student.
And I said, I learned that from Chad Stone. So I have Chad to give credit for. So just close out, I guess, is leisure and hospitality. That's really interesting to me because it is summer. You would still think that would be going up. I guess July and August will be telling. We're just at the beginning of the travel season. This
gets to the dreaded seasonal adjustment conversation.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, the data that get produced try to take out the effect of the normal kinds of job growth or job decline that occur for seasonal reasons every year in order to try to detect the underlying trend. And so the published data, the headline data, are seasonally adjusted, which means they're not meant to be the actual number of people, but what the number of people is plus a seasonal adjustment factor or minus a seasonal adjustment factor. And it's confusing to human beings, I know, but we economists trying to discern trends want to not get fooled by seasonal fluctuations. But I think this should be a good summer for employment, I think.
Yeah, one would think so. We hope so. But folks, it's still happening. People are coming back.
Every year, one thing is always predictable. Postage costs go up. Stamps.com gives you crazy discounts of up to 89% off USPS and UPS services, so your business will barely notice the change. Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses just like yours. It's like your own personal post office. No lines, no traffic, no waiting. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com code PROGRAM.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Available on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and at hero.co. That's HERO.co. Delicious, ultra-low net carb Hero Bread buns and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar, up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co. HERO.co. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.
We'll see what's going on with the African-American numbers, but for the most part, we're back. And just for the record, the African-American unemployment rate, as well as the Latino and other populations, are pretty much back where they were pre-pandemic.
Right. Which was a strong labor market.
Yeah, which is, and again, that's the 2-to-1 still isn't great, but that is the disproportionality that was during the pandemic is now back.
And the
to
black unemployment rate was 18% in April 2020.
Yeah.
The pandemic was really brutal.
Yeah, of course it was. CenterOnBudget.org, folks. Check out Chad Stone as always, and on Twitter at ChadCBPP. Chad, as always, good to talk to you, buddy.
Yeah, you too.